Good evening, everyone. This is Angel Muscane. I'm the district manager for Manhattan Community Board 11, welcoming you to the January 19th, 2021 meeting of our Economic Development and Culture Committee. I just want to share a couple of notes before handing it off to the committee chair to begin the meeting. Before we get started, just a reminder to everyone that until further notice, all meetings of CB11 will be conducted via video conference. Links to register to attend these video conferences for each of our meetings are being published on the meetings calendar on the website, CB11M.org. To avoid crosstalk and help the meeting run effectively, panelists and attendees are asked to keep their microphones on mute when they are not speaking. It is also helpful to utilize headphones. Those participating by phone can dial *6 to unmute. If you wish to share a question or comment, you may do so by utilizing the raise hands function. Our staff will monitor to ensure that hands are recognized in turn. Those participating by phone can dial *9 to raise their hand. Committee members will be called on first and then attendees. Please keep your questions or comments brief. And with that, I hand it off to Marissa Mack, Chair of the Economic Development and Culture Committee.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of the year for Economic Development. My name is Marissa Mack. I'm the chair, and just want to thank you all for coming. We have a full agenda this evening, but I am sure that we will move swiftly and efficiently through the items. It's all good stuff, all stuff for us to move forward with. So I'm excited about the presentations and some of the action items that we have on the agenda. Also, just want to quickly thank Angel for help setting everything up, and also Don Sanders, who is our co-chair of Economic Development as well. So Angel, will you be able to do attendance?
Yeah. Adam Briha. Let me get my participants list up. Adam Briha. Marissa Mack.
Here.
Giselle Malavé.
Here.
Art Perez.
Here.
Celia Ramirez. Celia Ramirez. Celia? No.
No, I don't think she's joining.
Okay. Don Sanders.
Here.
Vinnie Torres. Vinnie Torres. Jenny Tromsky.
Here.
Hey, Jenny.
Hey.
Stephen Villanueva. Stephen Villanueva. We do not have quorum yet. We're one short.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So we can move forward with, I guess, the presentations and discussion, at least.
Okay.
Can you start us off with the new information? I know there was an email sent today. Because of work, I wasn't able to review, but if you can just kind of give us an overview on the preliminary budget, that would be great.
Sure. So, our board members know this, our newer members, maybe not so much, but the mayor just announced the preliminary budget, just released the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2022 on the 16th. Upon release of the preliminary budget, community boards, borough presidents, so on, are given 30 days to submit a written response. So our committees are tasked with reviewing the documents of the preliminary budget and crafting recommendations for parts of the response that will be addressed to the different city agencies. Those will be compiled by the staff into a draft. We will work with the District Needs and Budget Committee to finalize that draft. And in February, the full board will vote to adopt that document before it's submitted. Our deadline is February 16th, so we'll be a day late, but they usually take it.
Thank you, Angel. And I know we'll be talking about this also a bit later with Giselle, who has been great in terms of keeping us updated, on the budget and the tracker. And how we're going to move forward with our, I believe, 3 primary goals for the budget this year. Is that correct, Giselle?
Yes, it is. I'll
Okay.
review the responses and then I guess we can have discussion.
Okay, perfect. So that we will do. I believe that's later on in the agenda. So we can move forward. I do see Vinny Angel, who's on. Hi, Vinny. How are you? So moving forward.
Doing well.
Good, good, good. Nice to see you. So just a
Steve
few
is here
notes.
too.
Oh, hi, Stephen. Okay, perfect. Great, great, great. Thank you. Nice to see you both. So moving along with the agenda, I'm very proud. First of all, I just want to say that I'm very proud of this committee. I feel like everybody's been taking on a task and doing work behind the scenes, which is extremely helpful and encouraging as we move forward. I know a lot of you know that I'm like, I don't want this to be a committee where we just meet and there are no action items and that we're not actually doing work. And not to say that, obviously about the board, but in terms of this committee, that's extremely important to me. So I just want to thank all of the committee members who have been in action. Just to make a note, last month, we participated in a toy drive with SAVE as a partnership in Union Settlement, and also Sephora was a contributor to our drive, which is amazing. This was the first year that we did it. We donated over 80 toys to a domestic violence shelter within the East Harlem neighborhood. So this is something that SAVE had actually done previously, and I believe they donated to a shelter on the west side, but thought it should be fitting that we do some work here on the east side where they're located. So this was a great partnership with them and some other partners as well, but I'm just very happy that we were able to do that this year, and hopefully next year we'll be able to continue that initiative. Also want to thank Union Settlement at Uptown Grand Central. We hosted and we'll talk about this later, but one of 3 sessions that we're holding geared towards helping our small businesses. And we had a session with the community development financial institutions within the neighborhood to let small businesses know what kind of grants they can apply for and what kind of programs are out there. So that was one of 3 sessions that we'll host, and the other 2 we'll be speaking about. So just wanted to make note of that. Just thank everybody who has been involved again and who's been working behind the scenes to make sure that we as a committee are in action within our community. Angel, is there anything else to mention?
No, just before you move on to the other updates, now that you have quorum, you should take a vote.
Yes.
To adopt the agenda for the record.
Perfect. Thank you. So yes, to have a motion to.
By Villanueva.
Okay, motion by Stephen, second.
Seconded by Jenny.
Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. Okay.
You could do it by
That needs to don't even do a roll call, right?
You could do
All
it
in
by
favor?
acclamation. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Perfect. So now we are moving right along to Carrie and Uptown Grand Central for their report on what's going on and what has been happening within the world of small business in 125th Street.
Sure thing. Thank you guys so much for having us and having these meetings so regularly and asking for our feedback, which is really important. I'll keep it short. Basically, there's sort of 4 things to mention. One is that in late December, East Harlem has pretty much escaped a lot of the small business closures that have hit Midtown and other areas. But in December, we started seeing it accelerate. Business is not closing permanently. They say not closing permanently, but closing for the winter. A lot of that has to do with just outdoor dining is not really working anymore. And so Nochiola, Made in Mexico, Mountain Bird, there's probably 5 or 6 that have closed indefinitely. And actually Pix 11 did a story about it for us. They all say that they're reopening, but it's tentative. So just FYI on that one, we're hoping that none of that is permanent. And then also alongside that, the NYC and Company, which is the citywide marketing agency, they don't typically market a lot of Harlem. Mostly it's Midtown and Statue of Liberty and like the downtown attractions. But for the first time they've opened up, and usually you have to pay to get marketed. And for the first time they've opened it up broadly to East Harlem. So we have a lot of businesses featured in that, and I'm gonna figure out how to drop in the chat in just a second so you can see how many businesses are featured. It is great because it means that East Harlem businesses are getting some attention.
Exposure. That's great.
Citywide website. And also for the first year, you know, NYC and Company usually does Restaurant Week, and I think maybe Red Rooster is usually typically invited to participate. And this year they're opening it up. They're making it Restaurant Week to go. And so we probably have 10 businesses participating in that as well. And that is a $20.21 price point. So you're going to see some of that happening soon, which is kind of exciting. I don't know if all of this will go back after the pandemic to us not being featured. But for now, we're getting on the city website, which is great.
Yes, we're hoping that it stays, because a lot of things that are coming into play now need to stay, you know, in various areas. So hoping that that continues, but that's great either way.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, at least everybody at NYC and Company is seeing that we have all these great things to list. And so maybe, you know, maybe that will help. I just dropped into the chat neighborhood getaways. So if you click on that and then click location East Harlem, you'll see all the wonderful things East Harlem has to offer. So please support all of those initiatives. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about PPP, because as you guys know, the federal stimulus passed at the end of December. And so banks started rolling out their programs last Monday for first round for people that had never gotten it before. And then on Wednesday for businesses that have gotten it before but want to apply again. Some lenders have still not opened their applications, but we have sent out a long list to our businesses. Ponce Bank is very actively working with East Harlem businesses, True Fund, and a few others. So they're actively, you know, calling, reaching out. So hopefully we'll have even better results this time than we did from last time.
Perfect.
And oh, sorry, where's the last thing? Is that Community Board 11 is going to help host a workshop on PPP next week. That's going to be taught by the Columbia Small Business Development Center.
Okay, perfect. And is this the event with NYC? Is this we okay? All right. So yeah. So and I was going to mention that earlier because that is the second of the third installment of what we were looking to do. So that's great. So we will further piggyback on that more in detail later. But so happy that you guys are doing that and that we are moving forward with that initiative. So that's great. Thank you for the update.
Thank you, guys.
And of course, share anything with us so that we can pass on. You know, many of us are already on your email list, just so that we can pass along the information.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Pablo? Hi.
Hi, guys. How are you?
How are you? Good, good, good. So do you have any updates on the grant? You know, what's going on at Union Settlement? How, you know, where we are at this point?
Yes, we continue to provide grants. That has not stopped, and customers continue to apply. We went out during mid-December to early January to let applicants who had not businesses who had not applied, let them know that they can still apply, and we're handing out flyers. So that has continued an inflow of application that is not stopping down. We have helped so far. Well, we have received 478 applications, 79 applications, but only 388 are from inside the district. And I'm amazed to see how many applications we're getting from outside the district. Is telling me how bad it is out there. And a great number of them are restaurants. And inside the district, many of them are also hair and nail salon, which are hurting because of the pandemic.
Pablo, question for you, and I know this might be a whole different realm and a whole different discussion. I know this is for small businesses. Have you guys thought about opening it up to like arts and culture as well, or that's different? I mean, you know, a whole different
That's a good
situation.
question.
But you know, different establishments. Yeah, since you do have available.
We haven't yet. We have a perception of need, very well focused on the essential businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to non-essentials, but from the non-essentials, the most essentials. And although art and cultural expressions are very important, we perceive that at this moment we should use the money for the businesses.
For food.
Yes, for food. That's
no, I completely understand. Just, you know, thinking about this, I know that there has been, you know, funds available for a while, and you guys have been marketing as well. So it's not like the word hasn't gotten out. It's just a matter of, you know, people getting paperwork together and or applying, what have you.
I have not seen any financial aid initiative supporting the arts, sadly. It's not only us. The closest one, it's the PPP, which allows nonprofits to apply. And that would be the closest, no?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing specific towards art and entertainment. And they're hurting too.
Right. No, absolutely. Just thinking through, you know, options, but, you know, I know that you guys are focused on that area. Okay. So you have, how much do you have left in, you know, in funds, and what's the plans for next steps, and, you know, where are you guys?
Tell you right away. We have approved so far, $2.6 million. And out of that, we have disbursed $2.5 million. That's $2.5 million that has flooded the economy, the local economy, and it's been very good to keep the businesses open.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we still have pending like $200,000 more that will be disbursed probably early next week. Again, the process continue. We are kind of establishing already a deadline to apply. It's going to be February the 16th. It's already on the flyers that we are distributing. And that means that we feel that we are getting close to the end of this grant. We should be able to have everything committed by then. That means 4 weeks from now.
Okay. All right. Perfect. And at the end of that deadline, what happens? Or you guys are just going to stop the grant, or hopefully you'll have everything dispersed by that time? Is that the goal?
It is a flexible deadline. If we still have money, we'll continue to provide grants. We're not going to go like public to tell everybody. I don't want to receive 100 applications and then we only have $100,000 to give. But we may sit down and establish the criteria for the last grants and go out and selectively market those.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. This is great. I mean, I'm happy that more people have applied. I remember when you guys, you know, first made the announcement, and then it was kind of slow at the beginning, and a lot of us were like, what's going on? There are tons of businesses that, you know, that need this money, that need to tap into this. So I'm happy to see, you know, as you've come to our meetings and as you've reported, people have understood that, you know, either, you know, they need to get their paperwork together, whatever the barriers were previously, that they have taken the steps to apply, you know, funding. So, you know, this grant is much appreciated, much needed in the community. You know, thank you guys for providing it, and thank you for coming with an update.
Yeah.
And so please keep us posted as the number goes down, and, you know, keep us up to date as February 16th approaches as to where you guys are in the process.
Are we having a new meeting before February 16th? It's going to be nice to provide you much closer to the end of date by then.
Yes, perfect. Perfect. I think we will have a meeting by then. I know some of our meeting dates have changed, so I'm not sure for February, but hopefully we will have one. If not, please provide the information to Angel, and you get it out and disperse the announcement of where you guys are with everything.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Angela. And just want to make a note because it's hard for me to kind of talk and listen and watch the chat. So I think like Dawn and Carrie and a couple of other names have popped up. So thank you guys for responding or answering questions or what have you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And Angel too. I'm sure he's behind the scenes doing the same. So next we have Anna. And Anna, thank you so much for coming. I feel like we haven't had you at our meetings, in the last few months. And so just wanted to see what's going on in regards to El Museo and how you guys are doing, or what are some of the needs, and see if there's anything that we can do on this end to assist you in any way. So I just wanted to get an update on where you guys are and what's going on at this point.
Yeah, thanks Marissa and Angel and the rest of the committee for inviting me to kind of give an update on what seems like years.
I know. I'm like, it's been a couple of months. It feels like it's been like years since you've been here to report, but a
lot has happened.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah. So really happy to report about what's going on at El Museo, but also, Marissa, I heard from your questions. I'll try to kind of take some of the lessons that we learned as a museum and cultural institution, so that you guys can also maybe share some resources with other East Harlem groups. I have a PowerPoint. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Angel.
You should be able to share. If you can't, I can do it for you.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, awesome.
Great. Let me know if
We can see it.
We can see it. Mm-hmm.
Boom, perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, great, fantastic. All right. Okay, so on March 13th, the museum closed along with every other museum in New York City. If you guys remember, the Met was the first museum to announce that it would close, and it was pretty much a domino effect after their announcement, given that they're the biggest museum in New York City. We closed effective immediately. We sent all of our staff home, administrative staff, and we told them to kind of pack up their stuff because we didn't know exactly when we would be able to let folks back into the building. And all administrative staff were asked to work remotely until further notice, and we're actually still working remotely. Because we're in a city-owned building, we did have our facilities staff, our essential workers, our frontline workers, we did ask them to still work on site to assist mostly the park rangers, to be honest. I don't know if folks know that the Heckscher building houses a lot of parks workers, city parks workers. Yeah, and so because so many New Yorkers flocked to the parks because they were holed up in their apartments, a lot of people were using the parks, and that meant that New York City parks had to deploy a lot more parks rangers. They had to do a lot more maintenance and upkeep. So while the museum was closed, the Heckscher building itself was actually really, really super active. Mm-hmm. I think usually we have maybe 50 to 75 parks rangers in the building at any one time, working, coming in and out of the building. I think at the height, our deputy director told me that we had several hundred parks workers going into and out of the building. And so El Museo facility staff were actually helpful in sanitizing and cleaning a lot of the common areas, the lobby, that first floor bathroom that everybody uses. And so our El Museo essential workers were kind of part of that effort to make sure the Heckscher building was safe for people to use. And so as a museum, we had to kind of look at our financial situation because we weren't open, our cafe wasn't open, our store wasn't open, we didn't have programs. I'm sure you guys can understand. That means that we had essentially all the revenue streams that we're used to having outside of our grants and our board donations were shut down. So we had to kind of look at our financial portfolio. We had to look at what were the portions of our budget that we could cut, that we could do without. We had to look at how we needed to change and fund that appropriately. And so we really had to like figure out how to stabilize our financial portfolio. It's sad to say, but because El Museo is no stranger to financial ups and downs, this is something that our financial staff in particular and our fundraising staff actually really knows how to go into emergency mode. And so we saw a lot of that skill set, to be honest, come into play. We knew what buckets we could use in that moment. We knew exactly how much money we had in the bank and how much we didn't have in the bank. We were also able to make a lot of good decisions in terms of delaying some decisions. You saw a lot of museums cut their teaching staff, their teaching educators. You saw a lot of museums make really hasty decisions and say, well, we're going to cut this part of the education department because guess what? We don't have schools coming to the museum. But we understood that we had a little bit of time. We had a couple weeks to figure out, okay, maybe there's a way that we can still employ our teaching artists, right? We're probably going to have to do something online. We can still employ our teaching artists by having them do that. And we can kind of figure out where the money's going to come from. You know, we knew exactly how much time we had before we kind of ran out of money and had to start making those decisions, those tough decisions. So we had to assess our financial portfolio. We did that quickly. We wanted to also serve as a community resource for the community, and we figured out how to do that. We looked for information people needed, information for food pantries, for COVID testing. We were able to kind of make a new webpage on our website and have that information live there so that folks could access it. And we put that in our e-blast. We also had to start thinking really quickly about what does virtual programming look like for us. We had never really done that before. We didn't have staff that knew how to do that. So we really needed a crash course in what that could look like for El Museo. So a little bit of what our financial picture looked like right after the shutdown. We were looking at almost a 30% loss of our annual budget. And that 30% comes from the revenue that I spoke about, revenue from our cafe, our ticket sales, or our ticket donations rather. And also our gala. Our gala takes place in May. And because the lockdown was in March, we were forecasting that we probably wouldn't be able to have our gala, which is our biggest fundraiser of the year. That's really what gets us into the black budget-wise every year is that gala. And so all of that all together, we were looking at almost a 30% loss. We do not have an endowment. A lot of organizations in East Harlem are not going to have that endowment, which, you know, is not a rainy day fund, but it's something that offers long-term stability for a lot of organizations. It's a pot of money that you can invest and have grow, and we don't really have that. You did see a lot of museums with bigger endowments, you know, like the Mets of the world and American Museum of Natural History. They did change some of the policies around how they access their endowment funds. And so we didn't really have that luxury. So just to kind of paint the picture of how precarious our situation was. That being said, we kind of really hunkered down and we looked at every single emergency relief fund we could find. The ones that were really helpful for us were, I think Pablo mentioned the PPP. So we were able to get on every single webinar we could find, and we were able to get a PPP loan through the Cross River Bank. We did have a problem with our bank. We bank with a big bank, and we were not able to apply with our normal bank because a lot of reasons. Other bigger museums were able to get a PPP with them. We actually had to go. We went to a smaller, more local bank, and we were able to get our PPP really early with them. We're really happy to say, and so that was able to kind of help us maintain our staff. So El Museo, you know, it was a blessing, but we didn't have to actually lay off any staff throughout the entire lockdown.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. Wow.
Yeah. We
Okay,
got our-
so- sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, but that's, yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, we got our PPP in really early. And so by the summertime, we were kind of halfway through the funds, through the PPP funds. And by that time, we had already applied to the New York Community Trust, which is an emergency grant that we did get. We also received a smaller emergency grant from the Hispanic Federation. And we also had some grants already lined up that were in their kind of final stages of assessment. And one of them was from the Mellon Foundation. And luckily, a lot of foundations, they really heard the need in the field, and those grants that we had applied for that we were good contenders for, that were specific to either a specific program or a position, they quickly told us that we could use it for general operating support, which is the area in which we have the most need, is really that operating support, the unsexy stuff, right? Our staffing, our bills, all the things that kind of are hard to fundraise for. A lot of foundations all of a sudden said, you know, the money that we're giving you, use it as you need. And we were able to kind of weather that fiscal 2020 storm. Really luckily also, we'll get more into it later on in the presentation, but in the summer, you know, there was a national reckoning in terms of cultural equity, racial equity, systemic inequality, and I'm sure a lot of community board committee members understand how that reflects in the arts and culture realm, is that organizations that serve communities of color are usually historically underfunded, and El Museo is definitely an example of that. The Ford Foundation had decided to change how they administer some funds. So they created a one-time only fund called America's Cultural Treasures. And they were going to select 20 organizations in the nation that have that are legacy organizations, that have a track record of work. And it was going to be a one-time kind of infusion of cash. And it would be a multi-year grant. So one time, in terms of this is the amount of money we're giving you, and you have 4 years to use it, and you can use it as you wish. And so I'm really proud to say that El Museo del Barrio was granted as one of the 20 American Cultural Treasure organizations. And the other New York organizations were Ballet Hispánico, the Museum of the Chinese in America, and the Studio Museum in Harlem. So that's a really beautiful kind of group to be a part of. And Ford Foundation understands how powerful they are in the foundation world. So for the Ford Foundation to say, you know, we acknowledge that we have not funded these organizations at the level that we fund other organizations, and this is our kind of way to correct this. It was really kind of a wake-up call to other smaller foundations, and so we hope that turns into reinvigorated conversations with other foundations. And so
and more recognition too.
Exactly.
Other areas, right? Maybe like outside of New York. Absolutely, that's great.
Absolutely, it raises it to a more national profile. 100%. You get the picture, and so, but all of that is to say, right? We got the PPP, we got the emergency money, we got the Ford grant. But that being said, the future of fundraising for arts and culture is going to change really massively in a way that we actually don't comprehend yet. And we're out there. We have a small fundraising team, but we're lucky to have a fundraising team. It's myself and one other full-time staffer and a part-time staffer. And a lot of what we're hearing is that, you know, the way wealthy donors give out money, that's probably going to change. They'll be looking to give to really what they consider really essential services. And so we don't know yet what that means for us. So even though we have, as I said, we weathered the storm, we have enough money to keep our doors open for this year and probably for next year, we're still in a position where we can't do a lot of long-term planning in terms of our finances. So we still kind of are in a really precarious place, and we still have a lot of gaps, right? Our staff is not 100% staffed, right? We still have a lot of gaps here and there. And so it's kind of, we're kind of doing okay right now, but we don't know.
Right. No, absolutely. And I mean, I think more so in regards to the ask and really, you know, having you here, as we know, like, we know that, everyone on every end right now is struggling financially, and I think that it's more of, what are the ways specifically that there are opportunities for, not only the museum, but also what's taking place now in terms of programming that people might tune in that maybe didn't tune in before, or have some exposure, to the museum where it wasn't before, to open that gap up. So, thank you for at least letting us know where you guys stand. I personally wasn't sure. I mean, I know you guys were still holding on, but I wasn't sure where you were in the we're holding on phase. And so happy to hear that you have been able to maintain staff and maintain relationships, with the members of the organization. If you could just briefly, I guess, tell us if there are programming options right now, what you guys are doing briefly, and then we'll take questions, and then just see if there's a way for us to, just further promote what you guys are doing to support through
Yeah.
the economic.
Absolutely. I'm going to talk about our programming and what ways folks can connect at the museum. I did want to say that once we come back online, and hopefully in the near future, once we're open more often, right now we're only open 2 days a week. That's where you're kind of, if you're open more days a week, you're going to have to spend more money, right? So I think that as it's a catch-22, because as your revenue opportunities increase right away, that's also when you have to spend more money to keep the doors open. So I think how we open up, we're probably going to be doing it in a phased approach, but right now the plan is to stay open 2 days a week. Our show Taller Boricua just closed this past weekend, and we're opening in March with a new exhibition. And we plan to continue to have a virtual presence for all of our shows, so that people that don't feel comfortable being indoors, they can still participate. So I'll talk a little bit about our programming. Just some of the things we did during the summer, really quick. We did a lot of census outreach. We worked with Diana to do some street activation for the census. We had bilingual census communications in our e-blasts. And we also did a lot of phone banking. We're partnering with Metropolitan Hospital to make sure that their walls are beautiful, and we're donating reproductions of some of our permanent collection pieces from artists that are from East Harlem. So we're donating those to Metropolitan Hospital. I'm going to speed along. So what are we doing virtually, and how can people connect? We came up with a new initiative. It's called El Museo en tu Casa. And it's pretty much, we turned everything that we do in person, we put it online and more, right? Even things that we've done in the past that we had recorded and we had never really edited it and made it look good enough for the public. We kind of went into our vaults, so to speak, and we kind of really got it up to speed and put it online on our Facebook page, our YouTube page. And so people can access it. We even got really old catalogs that we had never been able to reprint. Like this Pepón Osorio catalog is from a show that we did I think in the 90s, and we were able to digitize those catalogs. So you can actually go online, and it's like a blast from the past. You can look at all these beautiful catalogs from El Museo shows from decades ago, and look at them online for the first time ever. Before, you had to be kind of like a scholar doing like a master's
Curator.
A curator to get your hands on it, because we only had like five really old copies, and now they're digital and everybody can look at them and they're really beautiful. So that's one of the things we kind of packaged as El Museo en tu Casa, but we have a ton of virtual public programs. So we have Ponte Ready. Ponte Ready is like get ready in Spanish, and it's a wellness series. So we had experts who are kind of yogis and folks guiding us through meditation, but also a lot of small businesses. We worked with Woke Foods. They're a Dominican-owned food cooperative. We had them talking about how to cook healthy foods if you're tired of cooking and you don't know what to cook anymore. So that's Ponte Ready, and it's a series that happened once a month. We had Arte Hora, which is a series of our curators talking with artists. We had Jueves Social, which were kind of DJ dance parties that we did on Instagram Live. And we worked with a lot of local collectives to do that, like a party called Rosie Perez, Uptown Vinyl Supreme. We just really wanted to tap into a lot of artists that were out of work. We wanted to really kind of use a little bit of money that we had to create programming. We wanted to pay them to help us do that programming. So overall, we did over 50 virtual programs, including Dia de los Muertos. We had a whole a buffet of programs. We had our Three Kings Day celebration really recently, a virtual museum mile. We worked with all the museums on Fifth Avenue to do a virtual museum mile. So we had kind of like a really full calendar. Our education department also continued a lot of their good work. So we have partnerships in East Harlem schools, specifically PS 72 and PS 83. We were able, because of our strong relationships with those teachers, we were able to continue that online. We have a program with Terrence Cardinal Cook. We were also able to continue that virtually. The New York Autism Charter School, also in East Harlem, we also shifted that to the online forum. Our Coqui Club, which is for younger children and their families, pretty much everything that El Museo does in person, we were able to get it online. We had our first online exhibition ever, Popular Painters and Other Visionaries. We uploaded that during the summertime. We also embarked on continuous anti-racism training for the entire staff. We updated our diversity, equity, and inclusion plan, and we really became even more intentional about how to live up to our values of representation and equity, given the supremely important conversation that was happening in our country this summer. We wanted to step up to the plate to do that. We're also looking at ways that we can improve our advocacy role in arts and culture and in our community. We reopened in September with Taller Boricua, as I mentioned, and it just closed, but we have Taller Boricua now online, so that people that missed out the show, they can still see it. And just really quickly, the last thing I'll talk about is our upcoming show. We're opening in March. And we're really excited about this show because it's a show that it's a throwback. We used to have a show every 2 years called The S-Files, and it was an opportunity for artists that had never shown at the museum. It was an opportunity for them to have their first piece at the museum. And a small museum like a museo is usually it's like a beginning block for artists, right? Usually it's their first time that they have a piece in a big show. And so we hadn't had an S-File show in quite some time. And so now we're bringing it back as a 3-year cycle. We're calling it La Trienal. And we're having our first one in March. And so this is the first time we're also doing it nationally. It used to be just New York City, and now we're going all across the US. It's only Latinx artists, so no Latin American artists, only artists that have been immigrants and have come to the US and have had formative years here in the US, but you have to live currently in the US. And so, but half of the artists, that being said, it's national, but half of the artists are from New York City. And we're just really excited about some of these young artists. We have Lucia Hierro. She does.
I love that.
That's
something that we can all relate to or are familiar with. Yes.
Lucia is Dominican, and she's from Washington Heights, and she makes all these herself. They look real, but they're made out of paper. We have Vincent Valdez. He's Mexicano. He's from Texas. He makes paintings that look like pictures, but this is a painting that he actually painted with his hands. It's really amazing work, and it's really large when you see it in person. And this is Gonada Melendez. She was born in Dominican Republic, immigrated here when she was younger. She's a Dominican York, so she's a young person that went back and forth between DR and New York City, and she lives in the Bronx now. So we're really excited to have over 40 young artists in the museum. And this is the last thing I'm gonna say.
Okay, I was gonna say we do have to wrap it up. We have to wrap it up. Yes. Okay.
This past summer was the first year anniversary of our Community Advisory Council. And so we worked with them to diversify our board. This is our list of our CAC participants. You're going to see some familiar names on there. Nilsa has participated in meetings. Michelle Cruz from Diana's office. Diana has come to meetings. Debbie Quinones is a part of the advisory board. And we were actually able to add 4 new trustees. These are trustees that are on equal footing with all of our trustees, but they represent the community. They don't pay to be on the board. They pay us in the social capital and knowledge of the issues that community members care about. And they're Isabel Nazario, she's a professor.
We need more boards like that, yeah.
Yes, Gil, he's a professor at Northwestern University. He's considered one of the first kind of Latinx curators in the 60s, and he's an inspiration to all the younger Latinx curators now. We have Monica Tavares, who's a East Harlem resident, Dominican. All of these folks are, Gil is Mexican, Gabriela Palmieri, Isabel Nazario are Puerto Rican. Gabriela Palmieri is actually Eddie Palmieri's daughter. She has a connection to East Harlem. And Monica Tavares lives in East Harlem in La Celia. And so we're really proud of these 4 new trustees. And we're a small board, so this is actually a really big percentage growth in our community representation on our board. And we're really proud that we did that work with community members. Some of these folks' names even came from the Community Advisory Council. So we're really happy to have those folks on our board.
Perfect. So thank you. Sorry, I was like, I gotta have to cut you after that, but I wanted to thank you for presenting, and I just wanted to note too that you have seemed to have done an excellent job in partnership, which is something that is like, to me, is one of the most important things in terms of like our community and building up capital and making use of the resources that are around you. So, you know, I'm loving that you guys have, you said you have paintings with Terrence Cardinal Cook and some of the schools in the area. So I think that that's important for keeping your name out there and keeping engagement going. So I want to open it up for questions. Angel, could you help and let me know if you see any hands that are raised in terms of questions for the presentation?
Sure. I don't see any hands yet.
No hands. Okay. Well, Anna, you know, one, just please make sure, as you always do, just keep us posted on the events and the upcoming exhibition that you guys have going so that we can share that information as well. If there's any information you want to drop in the chat for folks, that would be helpful, either your contact information and or information on the museum. That would be great. But thank you for coming. We want to see you more often, and we would like to see some of our cultural institutions more often here at our committee, as we're economic and culture. But I wanted to thank you for sharing what's going on over there and coming. And please feel free to stop by whenever.
Thank you, Marissa. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so next, hi, Diana. Nice to see you. Angel, back to the agenda. Thank you. Okay, and so perfect. Oh, and Diana's up next. So perfect. Nice to see you.
I don't want to go after Anna.
Well, she gave a segue. She said you had participated in some of the events, so that was a perfect segue.
She's just so well spoken and so prepared. No, you did a wonderful job, and I wanted just to thank and give them a shout out, because El Museo del Barrio was really, a tremendous partner this summer as we were trying to galvanize the community around the census count. And we held a couple of really successful events and were able to sign up a lot of people. So thank you, Anna, and to the rest of the board for helping us out, because we really were trying to get people enrolled. So I'm Councilmember Ayala. I think I was invited tonight because I know that there's been some questions about, some of the work that, or at least some interest in understanding a little bit of the work that we've been doing around 125th Street. So, just as a matter of context, when I was a staffer at Councilmember Melissa Mark-Viverito's office, actually the month before she was appointed Speaker of the City Council, there was a group of community residents that came into the office asking us to help them to clean up a lot of what they were seeing. They lived on 124th Street and between Lexington and 3rd, and were really disturbed by all of the things that they were seeing. And so we wanted to be helpful. And I started going out to 125th Street, just trying to get an understanding of what the issues were, who was responsible, what had happened. And even though 125th Street has historically been, shaky, it really, really, really was bad at around that time. And the reason why, I think, was because synthetic marijuana had become really popular, and 125th Street somehow became the epicenter of synthetic marijuana. So if you were looking for it, whether you were from Brooklyn or Queens or whatever borough you lived in, you were probably coming to 125th Street at some point to buy your synthetic marijuana from one of our local delis. And so we decided that we were going to start a working group of stakeholders that would help us kind of really, better understand what those issues were and help us, come up with some action items to help remediate the conditions there. We invite the community board has always been a member. The local precinct, the residents were still, they're still parts of the working group. Uptown Grand Central has always been a part of the working group. Some of the local nonprofits in that area. Just recently, we've added some small businesses, some of the treatment facilities are represented at the working group. Department of Homeless Services is represented at the group, sanitation, DOT, all of the city agencies that play a role. And back then, we set up a list of action items that made sense, right? So removing the grates that the DOT had put installed between 123rd and 125th Street. So the grates were really installed to ensure that flash flooding was not impacting the subway station, right? It was in theory, it was a good idea, but that the design option just really was not helpful to us, specifically because we already had so many challenges on 125th Street. So that was, one of the things that we were able to do was to remove the grates and to replace that system with an underground contraption. We
And
also,
correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the removing of the grates was a quite expensive task as well.
it was, and it was very expensive. It was very expensive. So it took us a little while because the Department of Transportation originally didn't want to do it because, again, there was a specific, need for the grades, right? They had a very specific function, and it was necessary to have something. So we were lucky because there was another state that actually was piloting an underground model that they were able to replicate here on between 123rd and 125th Street. And that was funded through the City Council Speaker's Office. We then were able to introduce 3 pieces of legislation that really centered around enforcement of the synthetic marijuana, and the fact that it was sold at the local deli. So we now had the legal authority to shut down stores for a specific amount of time, and to really, it really had a financial impact on those delis that decided that, it was cool to come and sell this product here in East Harlem. And so some of them ended up, actually most of them ended up shutting down eventually because that was how they were, were profiting. A lot of their revenues were coming from the sale of synthetic marijuana alone. And we were able to introduce a separate piece of legislation that created an administrative code that would prohibit the sale of that would consider any type of synthetic, because the issues on 125th Street with the synthetic marijuana were that the state law makes it illegal to sell the synthetic marijuana. However, you have it becomes the city and the district attorney's responsibility to prove that the batch that a person was arrested with is in fact synthetic marijuana. And the way you do that is by testing the chemical composition. If the chemical composition does not meet the ingredients of that's on the list that's been banned, then it's not synthetic marijuana and it gets thrown out. As you can see, it was very tedious and time consuming and very difficult to be able to do that. So, there was no incentive to stop selling synthetic marijuana because, many dealers knew that there was no way that they were going to get arrested or that, anyone was going to do anything to them. So through the city law, what we did was that we changed the language so that it said anything resembling synthetic marijuana would be, you could be charged with a misdemeanor with. And we're actually working with the state to try to change the law now, the state law, so that it better reflects the city. So that way there's no confusion in the two penal codes. So that was also very successful. We also increased sanitation. At that time, we opted to put a mobile police van on Lexington Avenue. And the reason that we did that was because we had multiple stabbings. We had a couple of rapes that had occurred on the sidewalk. There was just a really serious criminal element that we needed to try to combat. And, unfortunately, that was the only way to do that at that time. And I think that, we were able to see a decrease with all of these actions. We were able to shrink the population by about 85%. 15%, however, were the most difficult and most challenging because these are individuals that are either, have been chronically street homeless or suffer from mental illness, serious substance abuse disorder. And, we cannot legally force someone into treatment. We can't force them to go into a shelter. And even though we have staff that's out there that's in contact with these people every single day, it takes years sometimes to build that trust, to engage with people in a way that would make them want to be receptive to these type of services. So when I came into office, I was still kind of dealing with that small percentage, right? That smaller population, which were primarily based out of the Park Avenue viaduct. And so, we reached out to the mayor's office and they kind of took over the working group for a little while. And, truth be told, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't where everybody would have wanted. And then this year, well, last year, because we're in January, we decided that we were going to take the group back, because we had started to kind of see an increase in certain activity. And then COVID hit, and COVID really devastated us in many, many ways. On 125th Street, however, we started to see more homeless people sleeping on the sidewalk. I mean, hundreds of them at any given time. And I think that was really due in part to the fact that the when the governor shut down, well, it was different issues, but one of the problems were, I think, that contributed was the fact that the governor's office shut down the train stations, and the train stations act as an unofficial shelter for many people. And so there was no real coordination between the city and the state to ensure that once those people came above ground, somebody was there to receive them and offer them services and connect them to beds at a local hotel, at a local shelter. None of that happened. So that was something that didn't only impact us, it also impacted other communities. So we were seeing this trend citywide. I think another thing that happened was that Wards Island, we have over 1,200 beds there, and obviously that's too many people. And in an effort to try to avoid, people getting sick, many of the shelter's population was removed, and those clients were sent to shelter to hotels. What happened was that a lot of people didn't want to leave. They didn't want to go to the shelter. They didn't want to go to the hotels because their informal support network was on 125th Street, was in the vicinity, of East
Mhm.
Harlem, and they
Mhm.
wanted to stay where they were close to home, or at least what felt closer to home. And so you saw just an influx of people on, just sleeping on the tree pits inside of the banks, on top of the planters. And then people wanted to feed them because they felt bad, and they would bring food, and there was food everywhere, and there was garbage everywhere. We saw a decrease in sanitation services because those services were shifted elsewhere. So now that garbage is building up. And we're very fortunate in having Carrie King up there. I'll tell you this. She was working round the clock, trying to get supplemental cleaning services up there, but we still couldn't keep up with the demand. And so we were able to invite the mayor. We, worked really hard throughout the summer with a lot of our community partners, and we're able to get a lot of those folks placed. We had actually extended an invitation to the mayor to come up. I think it was in June-ish, and he was intending to come, but never quite made it until a few months ago. And at that time, we decided to give him a tour of really, things have kind of settled down since the summer. They're better, much better, but we still have problems. And so we took him on a tour of Art Park, Ronald McNair Park, and the corridor along 100 between 123rd, 125th, and Lexington. And then we took him down to 125th and Park. He came on a Sunday. Many people thought that he should have come on a weekday because it would have given him the full experience. I can assure you that we got the full experience. There was active drug use happening at the local playgrounds. There were, homeless folks living under the scaffolding on 123rd and Lex. There was the McNair Park we had shut down a few days before because I was there, and we had, I don't know, 40, 50 men publicly injecting on the playground equipment. That park was just not even being utilized by children at this point. So we decided to shut it down temporarily until we kind of figured out a more strategic approach to dealing with what was happening there. And we try to keep it open, and even the PEP officers just couldn't. It actually they made the final decision to shutter it, because when I made the request, they really wanted to try to keep it open by putting in more PEP officers, but they were being threatened. It was just really bad. And then he got to see a lot of the garbage, the residual garbage. He got to see a lot of the mental health stuff that we were talking about. So since then, we've been able to add more supplemental cleaning. They've actually scrubbed down. Sanitation has scrubbed down 125th Street. They continue to do that as frequently as they can, and on an as needed basis. Carrie was really excited about that. I'm not sure if she's still on. We've been able to secure some resources for Art Park. We were able to move some stuff around, and the Parks Department has been working with Debbie Quinones, who runs the Friends of at that park, to try to help not only just shift some of the planters in a way that allows for more visibility into the park, but also allows us. She was really excited about sanitation. That's Carrie's on the chat talking about how excited she was. But we're also working with them to activate Ronald McNair Park. So as the warm weather months approach, we're going to be doing some public programming at the park. And for now, it is open during the times when enforcement is actually available to be in the park. So obviously things have kind of stabilized there. And we've also been a little bit more aggressive in our attempts to really ensure that the drug dealing that's happening along the corridor is really addressed in a way that makes sense. I think that there was a point where I literally would park my car there and just sit there for like 30-40 minutes just observing. And people would sell the drugs like 2 feet from the police officers, and they would do absolutely nothing. So I think that as of today, I'm really pleased with where we are. I think that we're headed in the right direction. I try to get there every other day. I do a drive-by in the mornings, in the afternoons, in the evenings, just to get a different perspective. We were able to get some additional resources to Carrie's group to Uptown Grand Central through the sale of the Pathmark. So they were able to benefit in that way. We're really trying to see if we could not only grow the Merchants Association, but to also create a bid on the corridor as well. So those are some of the things that we've been working on. I think we also got the HEAT team. So we have a HEAT team, which is a peer person, social worker that works together, and they come and they work with the mentally ill. We have been able to place quite a few people, so you're not seeing as many, but it's also cold. So we can't really tell
Until the summer, yeah.
it starts to get warmer. So that's why the consistency is really, really important. But I'm really pleased with where we are so far. My concern is, however, that we need to be really careful in addressing these issues. And I get people want immediate satisfaction, right? But we need to make sure that we do it correctly, because otherwise we're seeing that on 125th Street towards the west side, they also started to see some of this summer, right? And we don't want to push our issues to the west. We want to make sure that we're addressing them where they are, that we're meeting people where they are, and that we're doing it in a way that is not only humane, but it's also sustainable. So that's really kind of the only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about, because you can't really control that in the way that you would want to. But I'm open to
Councilmember, thank you so much, Councilmember Ayala, for presenting and always being available to come here and talk about
thank you.
What's going on within the community. We absolutely appreciate it. I just have one question, and then I would want to open it up for just a couple of questions from our committee here. But just one question to you in regards to I feel like we always get questions about 125th Street. Since I've been on the committee, there's always, what's going on? What can we do? are there opportunities for people to be more involved in the working group? You know, is this like, I don't, it didn't feel like it was a closed group, but you know, are there people that are really focused on, you know, 125th that want to either be involved in kind of like solving some of the concerns there? Obviously, we have Uptown Grand Central, which is, you know, a great resource, and we've connected people to see how they can help and volunteer with them as well. But is there, I guess, is there you know, individuals to know how can I support this task group and kind of task force and help to, I'm sorry, working group.
Yeah.
Help to move things, you know, forward in that space.
Yeah, I think so. I think that we were very purposeful when we created the group
Mhm.
to extend, you know, to ensure that it was populated by stakeholders that had some skin in the game, right? People that, you know, Department of Homeless Services, who's out there doing the outreach work, right? Because we wanted to make sure that the delivery of service was, you know, was good quality, but we also wanted to make sure that, you know, that we were talking to each other, that one hand knew what the other was doing, and that wasn't happening originally. So we're always happy. I think this year we've been able to extend an invitation and opened up the group to, you know, small businesses and community-based groups, just because we also realized that they were kind of left out of the conversation. And so a lot was happening and they didn't understand what, and they didn't know what anyone was doing about it. So the assumption is that no one is doing anything. So we did extend it to the group, but we try to be very careful, only because the larger the group,
Right.
the more difficult it becomes, and it becomes kind of like just an opportunity for people to just, you
Just
know,
vent and yeah.
vent, and we don't get anything accomplished. So so I think that, you know, yes, I'm always welcome to, you know, to extending an invitation, but you know, that was really the rationale behind us having a little bit more control over who sat in on the group. It was really because the intention was to make it a working group, and you know, we needed to make sure that the right people were going to be, you know, represented.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for even having the group and starting it and getting that moving and seeing the need. So that's already a big feat in itself. Angel, do you want to recognize the hands that are raised?
I have to. Xavier Santiago has his hand up. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Xavier?
Thank you. I was waiting for you, Marissa. Thank you very much. And thank you, council member. Any people who have questions and concerns, we've all been working steadily with this. And it was nice to have Zaria attend from Oasis when we had been working to get them to the table. And I want to express our thanks for our assemblyman who also worked with us and our council member. And now we have a partner there, so we can continue working together, because a lot of what we don't see, and I know you kind of briefly expressed this, Diana, is that there is an intersectionality between city and state agencies that don't overlap. And sometimes that baton passing is there. It's not just a handoff. It can be, you know, 50 meters away, and we have to realize which agency then it gets passed to. It's not direct. And I want to say, any questions that the community has that are brought before this committee or any others, please elevate it, because those members who participate at the invitation of our council member and the other working members of the working group, please bring that forward. And a good place for that is an executive committee from our other committee, so we can consolidate that. We do now have people who desire to work together and find tenable pathways towards positive solutions. So thank you very much for inviting our council member, Marissa, and thank you, Diana, for giving us a full, as I like to say, a brain dump on everything, like we have it now. So that was it. I just want to remind everyone that it's not a quick X then Y then Z. It's not always aligned that way. So.
And I think Carrie shared a piece that they did on positive workforce and the work that they've been doing up there, you know, in partnership with Uptown Grand Central. And I hope that you got to see and appreciate the lights that she put up this year. They look beautiful. We really thought that it was important to really change the vibe up there a little bit. We have to remember that it's a residential community, and people should feel You know, they should feel proud of where they come from. They should feel proud of where they live. But I think that, you know, I think that this is going to take us a few more years. I do believe, and I think you have, I don't know if Stephen Hayes is still reporting on the
I am.
project, but you know, I think that that project, even the Pathmark rebuild project, which is going to be a 9-story commercial, not what we wanted, but it could have been worse. And it'll bring some, you know, much needed retail opportunity, commercial space. I think that those projects will naturally kind of change and shift the dynamic in that community, right? Because you have places like Grand Central Station, people go there all the time, right? So it's the consistent flow, and it's overpopulated. And at some point it was really bad, right? But it isn't anymore. And I think that it doesn't have to be. And I think that if we dwell on, well, you know, we have the 1,200 beds at, you know, at Wards Island, yes, you know, we have problems, but I don't think that that is the problem, right? I think that, you know, some people really just unfortunately saw an opportunity to capitalize off of the most vulnerable in our community, and they have settled on 125th Street and made clients out of our, you know, our neighbors. And so we need to push back and say, like, that's not acceptable. This is not acceptable. And offer people a different, you know, a different view of what, a different perspective of what this community can, you know, can look like in the next 5-10 years.
Yes, and I also believe, you know, everybody in terms of the city doing their part too, which is a whole different discussion that we've, you know, seen in the news recently in regards to just making sure that there's equitable resources throughout New York City. And so that we're not just having this discussion here in East Harlem, you know, that is being recognized in other areas as well. So thank you so much for coming and presenting.
Thank you.
You always have questions about 125th Street. We thank everyone who's working hard to keep it beautiful and to sustain it and to, you know, make it a great place for people to come and visit. So we thank you so much for the work that you're doing in Uptown Grand Central and Positive Workforce and everybody who has contributed to that area. So thank you. So we are going to move along in our presentation. Angel, were there any more hands?
No, there's no more hands.
Thank you. All right, so we are moving forward. We have a discussion with the Cary Group on 125th Street Development Project, 1 East Harlem, and update on what's going on there. So do we have a Stephen Hayes here? Yes, okay, I see you. How are you?
Well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So if you could give us an update on construction hiring, how we're doing. We're Economic Development Committee, so we'd like to hear that. Angel, I saw you pop on. Is there anything that you wanted to state before the presentation, or? Nope. Okay. So Stephen, please go ahead.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you very much. For those that you probably know already, but the project that we're talking about is the one that's under construction right now on 3rd Avenue and 125th Street. And it's a partnership among 5 partners, Richmond Group, Bridges Development, Monadnock, El Barrio, Operation Fight Back, and Hope Community. And it's a EDC RFP project that my team was successful in winning and now owns and is in construction now. And what I wanted to talk to you about, let me just remind everyone of what the program of the project is. It includes about 404 units of housing. It also has approximately 40,000 square feet of Food Bazaar supermarket, which is a lease has been signed. It also has 5,000 square feet for Groove With Me, which a lease is being signed, I think, next week. Groove With Me, I think you all know this group. And then there's another approximately 5,000 square feet of local retail that we don't have a tenant for yet, but we're going to be in the process of looking for one, or we're in the process of looking for one at present. This project is going to be completed hopefully in October of this year. So we're moving ahead at quite a good pace. And the reason I'm here is because I wanted to just give you an update on construction hiring for local folks on this project. While this wasn't an EDC obligation, it was something that Diana approached the team a while ago saying, what can we do? What efforts can we make to hire locally? And I want to give you a report. We've been reporting regularly to the task force on this. And excuse me, I'm going to read you a little bit of this quickly because I don't have it committed to memory. but certainly ask me any questions as we go on.
Perfect, thank you. Mhm.
So when this endeavor began, the goal was to hire approximately 10% or 30 employees on site to be local residents. This is in the construction work that's happening. And these workers would be hired through Monadnock Construction. Monadnock's also one of the developers, but they also have a construction company. They're building the building, as well as their subcontractors. Monadnock also committed to providing 2 free OSHA 30 training programs to 70 local residents. And just a FYI, Monadnock subcontractors committed to pay residents hired on the site a wage of at minimum $18 an hour, and Monadnock pays $20 an hour depending on the experience. So it's slightly above what is sort of standard. And Monadnock also committed to sponsoring some apprenticeship projects along the way. So the hiring outreach and planning is being done in coordination with LaShawn Henry, who I think most of you know. She is the CEO of Urban Strategies of New York, and they do a lot of this work quite successfully, and she's been quite remarkable on this project. So let me just give you some updates on where we stand with statistics. And again, I'm sorry I have to read these. So in terms of training, so far Monadnock has sponsored 2 general training classes, one in December and last December, and December of 19, and the last one in February of 2020. There was supposed to be an additional ones that have been postponed due to COVID, unfortunately, but those are.
And these are the OSHA trainings? I'm so sorry.
No, OSHA is different. This is just general training.
Just general training, okay. Mhm.
The OSHA training has taken place, and that had 70 East Harlem residents participating in the OSHA 30 training, which was free of charge. That took place right before COVID, actually. I don't know the exact date. And Monadnock also has sponsored some vocational training classes to 15 residents. The classes are, besides the commitment for the OSHA training, are based on what is as you know, people have become interested and interviews have taken place for local people to be hired, what their needs have been and what the demands of the job are that their needs need to fill. So those are the different vocational training programs that have occurred. So in terms of placement, pre-COVID, up until March, 7 residents were placed in jobs. Post-COVID, 29 have been placed. So the total is already above the goal. We're at 36 so far, and construction is going to continue through the fall. So hopefully, what's shown is that there's a lot more interest in the construction industry within the East Harlem residential community, which has been great. I can send you a list of all the different categories of who was placed where. I'm not going to necessarily go through that here.
That would be great. If you could send that over, that'd be perfect.
One other thing I want to mention, because I think it's important, Monadnock has also hired 10 local residents on other job sites, not just this one, because they didn't necessarily fill the role in the East Harlem one, but it did give, this initiative has given Monadnock the opportunity to find qualified candidates for other jobs. So it's been a win-win for both groups, I think. So I can send the statistics over, but that's the summary of the local hiring on the construction sites. Again, I did mention this is going to be hopefully opening in November of this year. So it's going to be a nice thing to have, hopefully when COVID's under control and we can have a celebration.
Perfect. Thank you for presenting, and thank you for working on this and also opening up opportunities for members of our community. That's something that we are always discussing and pushing for. So I'm happy that LaShawn Henry, who was a former board member, is working on this as well, because she has a lot of knowledge in terms of the needs of this community, and obviously Councilmember Diana for connecting this and starting this conversation in regards to jobs. So I'm happy to hear some of the stats that have been reported. That is, that's great news to hear that not only have you met the community requirements, but that you are above, what is required for our community, and that you have engaged, members of this area. in the project. Quick question for you. So I know the project is cited to be completed in November. In terms of, and I guess this might be more of a question for the tenants that will be in there. Have we thought about, and this is forward thinking, but also engaging members of the community for future jobs, after the development is complete, in terms of just thinking forward?
Yeah, there's a whole second part of this, which is done in coordination with the task force that was created a few years ago that continues to work on this project, is local hiring for permanent jobs. And there's a variety of mechanisms by which to do that. Certainly, the only tenant that is just recently in place is Food Bazaar. They have a pretty substantial outreach program to local communities for hiring as a just as what they do generally in their other stores. And we're gathering that information. We're going to be setting up a task force meeting, hopefully next month, which will start the ball rolling on the efforts that will be made to hire locally for the permanent job positions. Again, we don't know what they all are, but we do know the grocery store, and that hires a lot of people. So we can start those efforts now. We're well aware that there's a lot of expertise within the community of gathering people to help fill those jobs, and we're certainly going to tap into that as we talk further about the task force. And Marissa, I think you're on the task force, so you're going to be well aware of it as well.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much, for presenting, and also glad to hear that the salaries are higher than just the minimum salaries, like a little bit higher at this point. So thank you for that, and looking forward to seeing the line items that you'll be able to send over on the areas. So I'm going to open it up for questions now. Angel, can you assist with the questions?
Vinnie Torres.
Great, thank you, Angel. So, Stephen, thank you for that presentation. A few questions on local hiring that you mentioned. Of the 36 that were placed, and an additional 10 that might have been placed on various other projects, which I guess brings that total up to a little over 40 or 46 actually. What was the total number of employees, construction workers that have been hired on the job? Has it been 100? Has it been 200? Has it been 300? Has it been 500? Do we know that number?
We know, I don't know exactly the number. It will total, my understanding is that by the end of the job, it's estimated to total 300. It's probably not 300 yet because we're not at, we have a significant number of jobs that will continue to change. Again, it's not jobs that are happening, the whole length of time for the project, but, painting jobs that last a certain period of time, carpentry jobs. But I can get the job breakdown. That's not a problem for you of the timeframes and the estimates going forward.
In order to assess where we are on percentages of local hiring targets, we need to know how many people have been placed on the site, right? That project has already, as you mentioned, closing up this October. A lot of us here in the community are familiar with the project. The superstructure, concrete, has already been completed. The masonry has been completed. The carpentry is well in its way. I would already estimate that if you haven't went beyond 300 residents, that construction workers, you're probably over that number. So to look at 40 placements, I think we might be questionable in terms of what percentages came in to the project. So if you can, provide that information, would be greatly appreciated. You mentioned apprenticeship hiring. Of those that have been hired there, how many of those were apprentices? Were they in any specific building trades?
There were, look at the numbers, and I'll be sending you this. There were 2 from the painter's apprenticeship group and 3 from the carpenter's apprenticeship group.
So when you,
I don't know what those groups mean, but that's what I'm told.
All right, so of those apprenticeship opportunities, are those apprenticeships that are gonna be enrolled in an apprenticeship program? Or are they helpers to a specific trade on the project?
They're enrolled in the apprenticeship program while working at the project.
So are these union building trade apprenticeship programs that you're relating to? Which apprenticeship programs are these?
It's painter and carpentry. I don't know about painter. I believe carpentry is union, but I can find that out.
So maybe we can do this. Can we allow for some of the information to be sent over to us, and then maybe we can examine it, because some of those questions, if any, might be answered in the documents that he's going to send over to us.
Absolutely. Yep.
Sounds like a plan. Just, and then if you can add to that information that can be shared, can you add the percentages of MWBEs that have been afforded opportunities and contract opportunities on the project, or do you have that now?
I don't have that now. That's a different side of it. That's all reported to EDC. So it's public knowledge. I can certainly send that to you. Yep.
That would be perfect.
Thank
you, Vinny. Thank you, Vinny, for specifically all of your questions, but specifically for the MWBE. You know, that's something that is extremely important to this committee. But Stephen, we will be looking for the document, I guess, more specific numbers on the percentages.
It'll be the breakdown of the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
Angel, are there any other questions?
I don't see any other hands, Marissa.
Okay. So Stephen, I do want to thank you. We are waiting for percentages, but I do want to at least acknowledge the fact that this is, you know, more than we hear at times for some of the projects that are in the area in terms of engagement, not only from, you know, from a construction standpoint, but then also looking forward. So these are the type of, and not to say that this is the, you know, necessarily the model, but we do want to have some conversation about hiring and engagement and forward thinking. And so I do at least want to thank you and say, you know, we acknowledge that there is movement and that you guys have been engaged and that you are working with the community, which is great. Stephen?
Yep.
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, from our committee, yes. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. Does anyone have an update on the local investment fund? I recall that was something that was being discussed early last year. I haven't heard anything since.
I can give that, Diane, unless you want to. I don't mind giving it. So the local investment fund is, if you all might remember, is a fund that is set up by the city's Economic Development Corporation, which is the entity that has the contract with us and the control of the other sites on this project. This project, the overall project, if you recall, includes most of the site between 2nd and 3rd Avenue on 125th and 126th, and a portion of the eastern side by 2nd Avenue of the block between 126 and 127. And each of those lots that EDC planned has a particular amount of local investment fund money that gets paid into the local investment fund once a closing happens. So the first portion of the local investment fund came at the closing of this site that we're talking about. That was $250,000. The local investment fund group, which is part of the task force, set up the local investment fund, hired a lawyer, opened a basic bank account, and took the deposit of the money. And it's in a fund right now, less the cost of setting up the investment fund. Subsequent closings to this will continue to fund that local investment fund up to an amount of $10 million. And that will take place depending on EDC's schedule and the timing of the closings that take place subsequent to the first one, which is the one that we're talking about right now. Does that answer the question?
Thank you for the update.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Stephen, from the committee, and thank you, Stephen, presenting for the update. Okay, so we are going to move forward. Thank you again for presenting, and we will look for that information. So we're going to move now to Barbara. Thank you for being with us this evening. And we just wanted to, you know, we've been getting a lot of questions throughout our full board and committee and through other avenues, just in general regarding 125th Street. And so we thought it would be great to also invite you as well, just talk about what has been going on with the bid on the west side, things that are happening in that space, and anything that has transpired during COVID and during this time that we've been quote unquote in quarantine.
So good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And thank you, Marissa and Angel, for inviting me. And I want to say that NILSA has been a very big supportive. Many of you may not know, but Community Board 11 is by law a member of the Board of Directors on the 125th Street bid. And thank you again, Javier, as well. So I think what I would like to do is share with you our experience of what happened with COVID, and also to lay out exactly what the 125th Street bid is. We're one of 76 business improvement districts in New York City. And the bid is a local law. And so it's a local law that is voluntary, that once it's instituted, it's mandatory. And so every property within the defined area that is taxable, particularly under the district plan that the area put forth, receives their assessments from the city, and they must pay because it is a local law. So we have in our bid 100 properties from Morningside to Fifth Avenue, and that includes the two east corner buildings of Fifth Avenue, which is the reason why Community Board 11 is a member of the bid board. So for us, when COVID hit, it immediately came to our attention that we had to go back to basics. And back to basics is our core services. And our core services is clean and safe, because we spend basically $300,000 a year on clean, and we spend $200,000 a year on safe. And it's very difficult to justify, no matter what the situation is, to those who are paying, why they're paying this and the area is not clean and safe. So we pivoted immediately, and how we were able to make that pivot. So I'll give you some lessons, share lessons as we go forth through this scenario. I think it was on a Friday when we were told not to come back to work. So there was no preparations for anything. And so we knew we could not pull our clean and safe team off the street. So we had to immediately figure out how to keep them safe, and to also to pick up the litter and keep the district functioning. We also immediately started looking at each and every business in terms of who was closing, who was staying open, because the laws came out and it took a while for them to define what was essential and what was not essential. So we started tracking which businesses were open, which were closing first, and start looking and analyzing the trends of what was happening. And so looking at those trends, we found that 125th Street, even though we had struggled to try to get restaurants there and we weren't successful, but that worked in our favor with COVID, because we don't have that large amount of people closing. We struggled to try to get hotels, but that also worked in our favor because we don't have all of the block of hotels that are closing. We struggled to try to get Class A office tenants, and we were not able to do that as well. But again, that worked in our favor because of all the people that were staying at home. And so through our retail recruitment, we were able to provide a large amount of essential services. And that was the driver. So we look at one time, before that, the sneaker market, the urban market was driving the trends in the sales and the customer journey. But now after COVID hit, it started being the essential services. And what were those essential services? The telephone companies, the Boost Mobile, the Verizon, the Spectrum, the banks. believe it or not, the post office and even the pawn shop, because then people started going to the pawn shop in order to sell and get money, and the liquor store. So when we looked at that, we saw that even though traffic had dropped about 80%, how were our businesses trying to survive? And that took us to the technology. So a lot of the larger corporations, and these are lessons to learn, they had really big, robust, technology platforms where they were selling to their customers. You had people like Jimmy Jazz who had 80,000 followers for years. So they were able to continue to market and communicate with their people. So what we realized, one of the things that we do as a bid is we don't do duplicate services. If somebody's doing it, and particularly if they're doing it well, then we move on to the next task, because 125th Street have so many different things. So we looked at ways of how we could share the information that we were learning from the larger businesses with the smaller businesses to try to get them up to speed, and that they had to, as fast as they could, they had to get into the digital space. So that's easier said than done, and they needed a lot of technical assistance. So what we did was we looked for people who could do it better than us, because the biggest thing that happened is by us not being able to go back into the office immediately, our whole communication was shut down. We had everybody's phone numbers, but the stores were closed, and people weren't willing beforehand to give out their personal cell number. So that became a major task. For basically a month and a half, one person was dedicated to finding all of our members, calling, sending emails, find all of them, so we could build a communication network to, one, educate them in terms of what was going on, two, to share information that we were receiving, not just once, on an ongoing daily basis. So we were communicating with our property owners. We divided up. There's some things where we communicate with property owners only. Sometimes we communicate with the businesses, the small businesses, through those communications, particularly from the property owners, because one of the things that happen with the bid is whether you have a tenant or not, you get the bid assessment, and you must pay it, because then you're subject to the same things as when you don't pay regular taxes. Your property can go in REM, go put liens on your property, so you have to pay it. So our focus was, in order to save small businesses, we got to make sure that these property owners are okay. A couple of things that we realized was, one, all of the property owners on 125th Street was willing to receive some pain. They knew that they were not going to be able to make money, and they also did not want to lose their tenants, because it would be harder to recruit during this time. So slowly but surely, some of them started on their own, and they specifically did not want the bid involved in this. But what they did was start making agreements with their tenants. Some of them used deposits for rent, some of them lowered rent temporarily. But the biggest thing that came out of this was tenants, the need to pivot for tenants to understand the customer, the new customer journey, and the new customer, tailoring your business to be able to make sure that you're meeting that journey. And if you don't, you're not going to make it.
Right.
And so there were a couple of things that came out of that. Like one model was, say, Krispy Kreme. Krispy Kreme was not here yet, but we knew that they were coming, and we were in communication with them, and they started doing delivery of donuts. And they found they were making more money doing delivery than before even COVID hit. And so property owners asked me to start collecting best practices of what was working and sharing it with all of the businesses, so they wouldn't have to start from scratch. So that's some of the things we did, was sharing with them what is working, what's not working. It's for us, what we have found is that, you know, we put a major focus on small businesses, but we put a focus on all businesses because everybody was feeling the burn. And larger businesses have more resources so they can share, and also they're in a position to test and lose, where smaller businesses cannot test and lose because
They need to
don't
know what's
have.
going to work, and that's it. Right.
Right, that's it. And if they lose, then they're out. So, so that's what we do is we have a real estate development committee that consists of property owners only. And we talk through this. And I will say I was the first one that tried to say we couldn't do holiday lights this year because of COVID. Fundraising was not going to be there. No one was everybody was putting money into helping social services, social justice, small business, but for events that just wasn't there. And so nobody bought it. The whole board said, can't you figure out a way to make something happen? Although they weren't writing more checks, but they felt that we needed to make it happen because they could not allow 125th Street to be dark for the holidays. And it was a major, made a major difference, because one of the things that lighting does is it shows a strong, shows a strong commercial district. Our mantra is, for us as a bid, is to make the area conducive for doing business. We don't need to help business. Business people know how to do business. But when you have blockages from policies from the city or the state, or you have circumstances like this that make them not have time to be able to figure out how to maneuver, then that's where we fill in that gap. We try to make sure like it may look like it's a little easy, but it's really hard. I mean, in the mornings when the homeless population grew during COVID, we would come to that district, and the amount of human feces and the amount of urine on the street, we had to buy special brooms and bleach that we, before anybody get there at 10 or 11 o'clock, my guys go out there and remove and bleach the street down because of the smell. And so people don't see that, but we start at 7 in the morning, and by 10 o'clock, we're trying to make sure that that street is conducive for business, because you don't know when someone is coming to look. Like when a vendor is coming to do business with your person, you don't know if someone is coming to look at the property. And if it looks like, and this comes straight from my owners, they don't care that it's dirty, but they don't want it to look like there's no effort in place to show that we are maintaining the district. Because sometimes they only get one time to show that space, to show that vacant space. So that's when COVID hit, we said we don't have time for promotions. We have to go back to basics so that we can maintain and stay afloat. And it's paid off. It's even though we have some tenants that leave, new ones come in. And we constantly try to get the ones who we see going under to pay attention to what the customers need. It may mean that you might have to change your products, like Mac Store, which sell lipstick. Well, nobody's doing lipstick. We all have masks on. So they have moved more into skincare, you know, so it's like looking at what's going on with your customer. And that's not easy, because it's not easy to find them. But that is one of the ways that we found that things were successful. The other thing we found is businesses needed urgent money where they could stay afloat right now while they're trying to figure it out, whether it was $200, $400. So that's when the Apollo and our organization, the BID and Harlem Commonwealth, came together. It was not a lot, but it was something that helped, and we created a micro grant out of our own budgets, because everybody was competing, trying to get grants. It takes a long time to write, to get grants, and then you don't get there. So we just said, let's do what we can do right now. And believe it or not, we only had $20,000 and we had 67 applications. That many people needed urgent money that didn't go through all the tests where you had to have your financial statements and show the this and show the that. We just wanted them to make sure they were from Harlem and to tell us how they were going to use the money. So the answer from that was they were trying to pivot. And the one thing they needed was they didn't know how to pivot, how to get into the technology and how to reach their customers. So our banners right now are looking like, you know, a storm went up there and that's what happened. And we are aware of it and we're working on it and designing it, but this is how we make the decisions. Right now, we got to get it clean first. We got to get it safe first.
Where the priorities are.
Those are the priorities. I mean, it's staying in touch with the owners of the properties has really been a key for us. So that finally it brought it down to the last thing, which is what our annual meeting was about, and that was managing expenditures, you know, during COVID. Because the amount of expenditures to the business owner as well as to the property owners have increased just based on the regulations that have come from the state and the city to be in compliance with keeping your employees healthy and safe. Some of the businesses have had to hire or bring in part-time people just to check off those lists. But
to keep up with everything, yeah.
Keep up with everything. And so that's bringing increased expenses. So what happens with that, that's fine for a certain amount of time. But now that we are getting closer, approaching a year, and people who are not paying rents could not pay, and the amounts are reaching 100,000, it's becoming problematic. Because how do you catch up when you're behind $100,000? So those are the kind of discussions that are going on, and people are trying to figure out how to do it. And lastly, what we did was we embarked on a project with Columbia University called COVID Watcher. And the whole purpose was to focus on all of the impediments that were keeping small businesses from functioning, from being financially viable, as well as safe. And so I'm happy to say we received over 600, it was citywide, but we were a community partner and helped to shape the survey. So we received over 600 results. They're being tabulated now. And there was over 150 businesses from Harlem that answered. So we're looking to see what that data reveals to help us to move into the future in terms of helping them in two ways: to keep their employees safe and themselves safe and their customers safe, and to be economically viable. I'll stop now and see if there are any questions.
Thank you so much for presenting on what has been going on with the bid and what you guys are working on. A lot of that information is so helpful for us over here. And I heard you talk a lot about what has been done and what has worked. We're actually working on now having a session with a few of our businesses to see what they have done to effectively use their PPP. And this is with Uptown Grand Central, how they have really been able to effectively use that money, because realizing, like you said, not everyone knows what to do, or not everyone has the knowledge on like how to move or what the next steps are. So if we can share best practices, as it seems like that's been happening a lot with the bid and through the organizations that are involved, that is a great way for people not to have to spend the time or the money with trial and error, right?
Right.
Can get to the heart of what they need to do, both financially and for time purposes. So I appreciate you sharing that note, and for us all to keep that in mind, because I feel like that's something that translates not only through businesses, but then also through different sectors. What's working for you and how can you share that with other people? And that cuts down time for everyone, right?
Yes.
And that cuts down financially to trial and error. So
Right.
I think that's the biggest takeaway from your share. But I am extremely grateful for you coming and talking about, how you guys have been able to pivot. And the micro grants, actually, a friend of mine got the Apollo grant, who is a small business.
Fantastic.
Yes, and so she is Imani. She
Yes.
does design. Yes, so she is ecstatic, but I'm happy that that's been available and open to use, and that you guys were able to come together to do that.
Yes.
So yeah, just wanted you to share out. We always want to hear from people in the community that are working and are helping small businesses. I'm going to open it now for questions, but I'm sure we would love to hear once you get the results in from the COVID survey and how businesses are doing. We would love to hear about that as well. So when those are available, please do feel free to come back. I'm sure there's information that we can obtain from that. Are there any questions from either the community or the committee on what was shared out? Okay, Angel, do you want to?
Sorry, my microphone wasn't working. Dawn?
Hi, it's Dawn, and thank you so much for all of this great information. I was wondering, some years ago, there was some question about protections for commercial tenants, sort of along the same lines as residential tenants. Did you guys look into that at all, increasing protections for commercial tenants along the 125th Street bid?
No, we didn't, and I can tell you why. Before COVID, we have pedestrian footfall counters, and we track the foot traffic, and so we were averaging somewhere close to the numbers, like it was hundreds of thousands of people, on those corners. Like on one side of the street, we were averaging 40,000 people. And so it was a robust market. And so the market forces are always was what drives everything. So we look back, and before 125th Street started growing, rents were $15 to $35 a square foot. And at that point, too, landlords would, at the end of the year, negotiate percentage of sales when they didn't get the rent from the tenants, and they still believe in that model. The problem becomes, and it is a problem for small businesses, is that when the market forces are there and they can get the rent, it's very difficult to get it lowered, and those type of protections what you're talking about. And we talk about it, I push it, and I just have to say is the market forces. It's very difficult when you have someone like Whole Food announced in a meeting downtown that they wanted to come to 125th Street. We found out about it in the newspaper. Every landlord on 125th Street started looking for the space. That's the kind of market forces that you're dealing with. So when you may be trying to save it for small businesses, it's just very difficult. And so I did put that concept forth before the board, and it was like talking to air. I got zero response from them. Because at that time, we were getting like $150 to $200 a square foot. They had moved. Now, they have moved down now. They're reducing, but that's where where it's gonna come from. When the market is down, they reduce rent. When it's up, they increase rent.
Thank you, Barbara. And are there any other questions, Angel?
I don't see any other hands, Marissa.
Okay, thank you. So Barbara, thank you again for presenting on some of what's going on with the bid. We appreciate this information because I think there's something that everyone can take from from you sharing out about what's going on. And again, we welcome you back when you have the results in from the survey
Sure.
to hear some of that information.
I'll give it to Angel.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Okay,
And
thank you.
thank you.
I'm
Okay,
gonna
have a
Thank
good
you,
jump,
evening.
Barbara.
guys, okay?
Thank you. Okay.
Sure.
Bye.
Thanks again.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, so we are moving on. We actually are going to table our goals for 2020 and accomplishments. I just do want to just state two things that we are working on. And Carrie mentioned this at the beginning of the call. We will have a session on how to best use your PPP funds. Carrie and I spoke about this and realizing, Uptown Grand Central knows a lot of obviously small businesses that have received funds, but just may not know exactly what to do. So we are working on that, as well as how to market your business. And so Carrie and I will be working on that. And then also quickly, Stephen Villanueva and Elsie, I believe she is is a vice chair of land use. We are going to work on just tracking some of the ways that developers can come in to our neighborhood and partner with us in terms of economic development, that whether that be jobs, through the arts, through education in some way, so that when they come in, we are able to basically say to them, look, here's what you can do as a developer to engage with our community, no questions. And so Dawn is going to work on building that list, but we will all be contributing and adding to it. So just wanted to make those two important announcements for our goals, but we are going to move forward now with our most important discussion, our budget needs. And so we're going to start this conversation this evening, but what we are going to do is I'm going to ask that individuals also go in, and we will have I would like more detailed responses via email as well. So Giselle, I know you were on this call and you have been extremely helpful in this space for us. Could you give just a little update? Angel did earlier, but just give a little update as to where we are, what we need to do, because I believe there are 3 areas that we have to kind of narrow down and report out, and where we are at this point.
Thank you, Marissa, everyone. We did receive agency responses for our request, and I kind of bundled up. So with the New York Public Library, our request for the 125th renovation, we and the Library, the response was the same from the New York Public Library, which was that they support the request. However, city funded capital appropriations are required to initiate this project. So again, the funding is questionable. The second request.
So I think Giselle, I'm sorry, hold on 1 minute, only because I don't think we're going to go through each and every item this evening.
Okay.
I think what we're going to do is if you could give an overview of what we need to do, because I think we are responding to 3 areas, right? If I am correct, right? So we're looking at either like housing, jobs, and small businesses. Is that if you could kind of give an overview on that so we know which way to move?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. For the Department of Small Business, I'm not sure about the housing, but I that with the Department of.
Not housing.
Go ahead, Angel.
Oh, I'm just saying not housing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Department of Small Business, will accommodate the issue. They pretty much, they need, so in terms of the occupational skills and training programs, again, they're asking us to kind of reference back to SBS with the existing resources that they already have, I guess, in place. Same thing goes for the occupational skills and training programs. SBS, our request for the community-based organizations efforts for the marketing and promotion. Again, they are asking for a sponsor group to apply through their program and through their funding process. And they gave us the website for us to be to, you know, reference to and be able to apply this. nyc.gov/neighborhoods. I explained already what the New York Public Library requests, and I guess in terms of agencies, the Department of Cultural Affairs did our request with them. They pretty much, again, they need further study for our requests for the fashion, film, and food manufacturing, life sciences, and healthcare requests. And I guess we pretty much need to talk about the responses individually, and we need to focus, I guess, on 3, like you said, Marissa. Let's pick the 3 that are most important and respond.
So just a quick question. Are we responding to all? Are we picking the top 3? Am I making this? My only question was, I thought that we, in terms of this year, we were going to, I guess, pick the top 3 areas in which we wanted to focus on. Is Angel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think we're conflating 2 things.
Okay.
So the goals and accomplishments discussion was the 3 and 3.
Yes. No, I know. Yes. Mhm.
Right. This is not the same thing. So you don't have to pick the 3. You
Okay.
could if you wanted to, but you're not limited to that at all.
No. Okay. So Giselle, yeah, we do want to respond to all of the that we have put in. And so let's, for now, let's start out and do a few now through this session. And then what I would like to ask the committee to do is to also read through and supply their responses. I don't mind collecting that. So if you want to email your responses to myself and CC Giselle, just so that she's not, overwhelmed with just individual emails, that would be fine. But I would like for us to start the conversation this evening and then have further responses through email, if that works for you.
Yes, 100%. That works for me. So,
and Angel, is that okay with you as well?
Yeah, no, whatever works for you guys.
Okay. All right. Okay, Giselle.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so in terms of the New York Public Library, I guess we all need to kind of dive in a little bit and see where is it that the New York Public Library is receiving funding, because their response is kind of the same. They don't have the money for this right now, is what it seems like. So we need to, I guess, as a like, and we can all take this up in parts, to start to dive in to see where they're getting their money from, so that we can specifically target that, that funding area.
So here's my, and I don't want to, seem insensitive to the library at this time. If there's no funding for this, I'm inclined to not to go crazy and research on this, because yes, we need our libraries, but I feel a strong pull towards our small businesses and our jobs and that area. But I am open to discussion in terms of other resources and ways that the library might be able to receive funding. And maybe that's something that we can look into and then respond via email, since that information for me is not available at this time.
Yeah. And you know what, Marissa? I don't think it's insensitivity. Honestly, I feel like with the way that, everything's just being so technical now, everything is online, everything is through a phone.
And we do want to focus on that, but I also want to make sure that people are fed and people are able and have funds so that they can go to the library and things of that nature. So I know this is being recorded and this is probably completely to the left, but in terms of the time that we want to spend on that, let's have that be something that we email back.
Okay, so we'll focus on. Okay, so that covers pretty much three requests that had to do with the New York Public Library. Then we move on to one from the Department of Small Businesses, which is what you kind of, like you said, you want to focus on, in occupational skills training and programs. And again, they're asking to reference to the SBS with their existing resources. So what do you guys think that we can respond to with the small business services?
So I know that they have pivoted their programs currently as it relates to our current environment. My concern would be ensuring that, I mean, they are online, so all communities have access to it. But I guess my concern would be ensuring that information is sent out to the communities that need it the most, or where jobs are needed the most. Information now is circulated through email, social media, because people are not out as much. It's not like, okay, you aren't receiving a flyer, you aren't receiving an update in a certain way. But I would want to make sure that the resources that they do have available are distributed throughout communications that surround neighborhoods of color. And I want this to be a conversation. This is not just me. We all have a passion for these responses. That's why we're on economic development. So I would like to hear from others as well in regards to, what we can do. When we responded initially, everything had the caveat of COVID. So that's already built into, the responses that we gave previously. So I want other people to opine upon our discussion here. Stephen?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I just want to echo the fact on that particular budget request that come March 1st of this year, the third and final milestone of Local Law 196 of 2017 is set into go into place. Just a quick refresher, that local law requires that all workers on construction sites in New York City have 40 hours of site safety training. During a pandemic, during historically low employment, and even today with the presentation, we saw the numbers, getting people, local hired, getting training opportunities and job placements become more of a barrier. For as long as that statement remains on the district needs, where 98,000 residents 16 years or older, 51% of them are out of the workforce. It would be helpful to perhaps maybe engage SBS directly to see how they plan on, or perhaps what mechanisms they have in place to provide funding for residents in the district to get access to this training. When the training was first rolled out, I believe SBS allotted $5 million citywide. So basically $1 million for each borough. And I believe that was liquidated fairly quickly, but we haven't heard an update on it. This is another barrier to getting to work and getting people, hired on the job. So I would like perhaps to see if we can get some follow-up from SBS on this.
I guess to kind of sum that up and like directly to, I guess, would you say to ensure that trainings and resources are directly available to our community and not
absolutely similar to the free training that they had sponsored upon the initial rollouts, just making sure that some funding gets allocated to ensuring people in the community can get trained.
Right. So yeah, so they have the general training now that's online that has been, they have pivoted because of COVID, but to ensure that there are specific trainings or there's an allotment for individuals within this community for training.
Yes, that works.
And Giselle, we can review, I know we're all over, so we'll review this later, but we're just getting like the general gist of, what we'd like to say. Okay.
Put it all in an email.
Okay.
And put it all together nice and neat, and then we can.
Perfect. Thank you, and thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen. And then
No problem.
So there was also a request from SBS for the, like I said, the community-based organizations to provide district marketing brand. I was kind of thinking like if there is no direct or specific funding, this one is important. The marketing, branding, and promotion now more important than ever, I think, for our small businesses for sure. So maybe we can ask them to elaborate a little bit more on this one.
I would agree, only because the organizations that provide marketing don't have that either. Like, everybody's kind of like in a circle of you go over here, but they, no one really has the direct funds to use that as well. And so, yes, not pointing it back at the city necessarily, but you're not able to necessarily provide everything that is needed. So, yeah, I would say in terms of SBS, ways for them to also look at marketing resources as opposed to just kicking it back to the organizations that are within the communities as well.
And that also goes hand in hand, I guess, with the other requests, with the on-site business compliance with city regulations. I think that's a big one when it comes to, our businesses here in the community. Like, I feel like they always do kind of need a refresher on like how to comply, how to keep in compliance to avoid those violations, those fees that, can be thousands of dollars.
And what was their response?
Their response was, the agency will try to accommodate this issue within existing resources. And that's pretty much the response that
I mean, that sounds kind of vague, but that sounds vague for the needs, because one of the things that we're looking to work on as a committee is a session to help small businesses know what they need to do so they're not jumping through hoops trying to avoid fines and different information. Stephen?
Yes, Madam Chair. The timing was excellent, Giselle, with what you just said about accommodating with existing resources. I was just looking at the tracker that Angel sent us. And so I guess for any one of the requests that our committee has to respond to, where they give us the boilerplate, accommodate with existing resources or fund, quote unquote, in part, perhaps we can respond with getting more detail as to, what resources those are, how much, and perhaps even a schedule of, how it plans to be released, because some of the requests they said they would fund in part. So what does that mean? If they could quantify that.
So for this request, though, they just indicated that they will do their best, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's very vague. And that doesn't give us anything, concrete, sorry.
So pretty much we need more information
to work with. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
How much?
So I think though that besides including that in this response, I think that's something that we can follow up directly with SBS. Maybe even have them come in and speak to us about those specifics.
Where where they've kind of generalized like that there's more to do, but
Yeah,
just
yeah.
not exactly what it is.
Right. So like typically if they say we'll accommodate, that means they're doing it, and you always want to know the specifics, and then we'll try, then okay, well, how much are you gonna try? I guess
Or present on what you're gonna do.
the red light is when they say no.
Right.
Then you're like,
Mhm.
oh.
Right.
But I think with the will and try, we can certainly, like, like we've had what is her name? Jeanette Peguero from SBS, who's our rep, come in and speak to us, and she could, we could have her come in and give us specifics. I mean, besides including in the response, of course.
Right, yeah, so there's, I mean, for that, that's not to say that it's not acceptable, but we can have a follow-up discussion with that as opposed to now sending back another response, because it is vague. And we would want to know specifically how that's going to be done. So in terms of follow-up, we would like to have a follow-up discussion, and that could be the same for all responses that say that they are going to do it, but they just don't say specifically how.
And then there's for the Second Avenue
Something.
that was also a request for SBS. I mean, the agency that responded for that request. And that was also the response. So would you guys also like a little bit more? We need to provide something for to get a reaction.
Well, so that we would like to have further discussion about the specifics of the request or the specifics of the response. Steven, you're good.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, my phone was acting up. I didn't have anything specific for the Second Avenue subway in front of me. I'm looking at the attachments here. But with that being said, the Second Avenue subway has the capacity to put a lot of local businesses, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and people to work. Anytime we have had discussions with the MTA, when I was present, it seemed like we hit a brick wall with boilerplate responses. I'd like to see a more tangible plan on community engagement on the economic development side. Perhaps it's something we can look into.
So I think I definitely agree, and I think that would be something that, as Angel said, if for the areas where they said that there is something that can be done, but specifics weren't given, then that's an opportunity to have them come and have a conversation about that, as opposed to just saying, okay, you're going to do something, but we don't know what it is. And then, right, so then there's okay, this is what we would like. Yes, you're going to do this, but here are the specifics, and here are some examples of how we can do that. Does that seem like
that works?
That's fair. Okay.
Thank you.
I know that we have a certain amount of time to respond to the responses, but is it possible to have to maybe have someone from SBS come before we have to or have someone like Stephen was saying to get more specifics on the Second Avenue subway before we respond? Is that something that could happen, or
We have to get them on the phone.
I'm sorry?
So we would have to get them on the phone.
Okay. We wouldn't have a meeting before.
Yeah, you guys won't meet until the day after the full board, but phone call we could do anytime.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think the last bunch is for the EDC, Department of Culture. When our requests were to support nonprofit cultural organizations, and their response was, the Department of Cultural Affairs recommends this project be brought to the attention of your local elected officials. Example, borough council.
I'm sorry, I thought I was muted.
No way. No,
that's
the
pointing the finger.
We have one on the computer, so we have one on the call.
I have it on the computer, but just in case. Yeah, so I don't know. How do you, it doesn't, the next one is also further study by the agency. So do you guys want us to see if we can get them on a call or get more information for those two requests?
No, so we need more information. We're not going to be able to do a call with our entire committee is a bit much, but we do need more information, and the standard, point the finger over here for the money or go over here is not acceptable for our community, because then we won't get anything, or we won't get anything done concrete. My recommendation is that we allow that we respond in saying that detailed information is required. I don't know what that will do on their end. Angel, I'm not sure if you are, not necessarily privy, but have any idea as to how specific of a response we would get from that, or what a recommendation would be. But I wouldn't want to just keep it open and we have to respond by the 16th.
Right. So like in terms of getting the letter that we're going to submit is not going to get us a response. They're not going to respond to us. There's the letter is an exercise in elevating what our further elevating our priorities. But getting, clarity from the agencies, there's the list of contacts in the budget register. And then I also have contacts that, we can get, like you and Giselle, or, one or two of you or three or whatever, on a call with SPS and get that clarification, or EDC or DCLA or even OMB on the ones that they're saying, speak to your elected officials. And we can even talk, and of course we're talking to the elected officials, like, hey, look, we really want this, and they've pushed this, they pointed us back in your direction. Is this something you can support, or something you can fight for? Because, our council members are at the table when they're negotiating this stuff.
So that would be productive.
Yeah, and I was laughing because one of the council members is on this call.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably
I know
10 others as well.
I'm professional in moments, but that's why.
Yes. And probably on 10 other calls as well. But that is something that can happen for the responses that were given that were just general responses without specifics as to how. And so that we can do. So would that be possible to set up, Angel, and see how we can move forward with that?
Yes.
Yes. Combined, yes. Group effort, yes.
Yeah, it would be good for everyone to kind of maybe try to reach out, and then we can properly respond.
Yes, and we'll have a few people on the call. So we'll figure that out in terms of how to navigate that and ensure that we get responses that are more concrete, and not pointing it over to someone else to handle.
Okay.
And Giselle, does that work for you?
Yes. And there's nothing that we want to take off. There's everything we want to keep. We just want
clarity. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think so. Marissa, just tell me again, the New York Public Library, not that we're pushing them to the back, but just look into it as well.
Yes. For the general response.
Okay. I'm gonna again put it in an email and send it out to you guys, and then we can discuss.
You are great. You have done a wonderful job with this. I know we're not completely done and out of the woods yet, but I greatly appreciate your efforts in this, and being a new community board member, you have really stepped up. So thank you so much for your help.
Thank you as well.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I do not have any old business. Old business? Anyone, Dawn, anybody? No one? New new business. I've covered a little bit of what we plan to do, but we can discuss that later on. A lot of things are already in motion, which is great. And I'm very happy to be working with land use and collaboration there, which Stephen is always pushing for. So I'm happy that we're doing that. And
Same here.
Anything else? Any new business? Announcements? No? Okay. Angel saying no, let's go. Next.
Angel's falling asleep,
You're
I
not,
think.
you're on mute, but your head is not on mute.
I'm getting sleepy, dude.
I know. I'm sorry. We want you to go to bed. We all want to go to bed. Any announcements, anything? No, if not, have a good evening.
Yeah, wait a minute, Marissa. I do have an announcement. It's
Okay. Sure. Hi, how are you?
I'm just announcing, I'm good. Thank you for having always a very informative meeting. I'm just announcing that March 1st will open up my 16-week job training program for the insurance industry. So if you know anybody between the ages of 18 and 50 that wants to learn about the insurance industry and curious about it and then want to get licensed as an independent insurance agent and broker, you can send my way. I'll drop my website in the chat. Thank you.
Perfect. And please send the information over to us via email as well. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if the lady that spoke could perhaps email a breakdown to yourself for us to review on the insurance training program.
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Angel, you can start putting your bedclothes on. We're done. Okay.
I'm gonna put my mask on. I'm gonna all that.
Okay. All right,
Great
everybody.
meeting. Thank you, guys.
For hanging
Good
in
night,
there. I
everyone.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a good evening. Thank you all.
Angel,
Thanks.
Night,
send me,
everyone.
Bye.
So
send me
much.
the recording before you lay down. Can you do it?
Bye. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, guys.